So you know what we're here to talk about? We're here to talk about people finding their thing. So you want to tell us a little bit about your thing?
I do. I have actually a lot of things to say about the thing because what I do is I work with people generally who are wanting to start a business. So to make part of their thing in the way in which they make money be in some way related to starting a business as opposed to a career. And that path has come from a long time of working on the human side of business, first inside companies, working within training and development, of helping people to grow and develop within companies, and then as an outside consultant where I worked in a whole bunch of companies to work with people to try to improve them from the inside. And then in the last 6 years, an escape from Cubicle Nation, of working with corporate employees that want to leave and start a business. So what's interesting is, although I have many, many conversations with people about what their thing is, I actually fundamentally don't believe there is one thing for most people, which we can definitely get into. I think that can be something that slips a lot of people up because they think the sky's going to open up and the answer's going to come and they're going to know their thing and they're going to tiptoe down through the pile of tulips for the rest of their life. And it actually, in my experience, rarely happens like that.
So how does it usually happen?
The broader context and the way I'm thinking about it lately is it's related to your body of work. So your body of work is a way of thinking about everything that you do in the world, how you interact with people, the kinds of things you might physically produce, anything from needlepoint to a book to a whole generation of really fantastic entrepreneurs, if you're somebody like a coach. And so in your body of work, it doesn't necessarily have to be around one particular thing. If you think about your life's work as including this huge body of work that can have some disparate pieces to it, it might reduce some anxiety for thinking that there has to just be this one thing. Start to list ingredients. I call it listing your own personal ingredients. So you can say, you know what, I got a little bit of, coach in me, and I really love music, and I think music is a very powerful, thing. And I'm totally fascinated by like Apple products. And, I really love Thailand. And just begin to like list all of the different ingredients that can just have you become aware of yourself and what your interests are. It also includes things like you talked about. What are your personal values, right? What are lines that you will never cross when it comes to ethics or personal values? What are your strengths? What are strengths that you have that you've noticed all the way through school? Are you really analytical? Are you great in presentations? Whatever that is. So when you have your list of ingredients, what I tell my clients is just like become ingredients in search of a recipe. Once again, you can eat many different plates throughout the course of your life. So at a certain stage, the recipe is found in problems in the world that are meant to be solved. So to use a personal example, that's part of what I saw when I did my own assessment of ingredients. I love to work with people. I love to coach. I'm fascinated by the startup experience. I love business. I love marketing and growing businesses. There are a huge amount of people who are very highly qualified and competent that are coaching people how to do that. There are a ton of books written about it. But the gap that I found is there were few people who were addressing the specific issue for corporate employees who wanted to leave their jobs and start a business, and all of the issues that were associated with that. So they would read all the books that just talked about, here are the 10 steps to open for business, that would leave out things like, how do you go through a massive identity shift? How do you tell your parents that you're going to leave your job, that they have worked so hard and spent all their money to send you through college, to be a doctor or be a lawyer, and here you want to go open a cookie business or something, How do you have those conversations? How do you deal with fear? That for me was an example of taking my ingredients and finding a particular place in the market that had a need for the specific kind of thing that I wanted to develop, right? And so that has been my thing for the last 6 years.
That piece where you recognize the opportunity or the transition, were those some personal experiences that you that you had where you were moving from this realm to that realm and sort of felt some of those pains yourself?
But for whatever reason, in my own life, it's always been pretty clear. And the way it generally appears is I'll find the vein of what it is that I want to be doing, and I might, be in it and kind of put out that thought, like, what is that next thing? What's the next thing that I want to do? And things generally, open up. Now, that said, and the reason I say that is exactly for the reason that you and I have talked about before. It's so annoying, right? It's like somebody who, if you struggle with that issue, and it isn't easy and it doesn't come, and there's somebody like me like, well, just set the intention to the universe, man, it'll come. Like, that is not helpful. And so that's where I've learned, working with different people, that there are particular tools to use. But that said, I remember when I was getting ready for that transition between the corporate consulting, which I did for about 9 years, and Escape from Cubicle Nation, I was definitely in that whole stew of trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And I took a class with a woman named Suzanne Falter Barnes that was about developing an online presence. I had been trained as a life coach with Martha Beck, and I loved her methodology, but I wasn't totally vibing with like just doing life coaching, because I had this whole side that I really love business. And I spent a few months of really deep introspection of thinking about my market and, sharing ideas and kind of moving things around and really putting myself intensely into figuring out like what might that recipe be. And that's when I eventually hit on Escape from Cubicle Nation. And it was something that evolved. Like, I had no idea it would turn into a book. I didn't know it would be, kind of a thing. But that's an example of where many people, I think, don't have appreciation for how long it takes sometimes to be, stewing on ideas. So in one hand, it's totally okay if you're stewing on ideas and you're asking yourself questions like I'm sure you're going to be helping people with, in the overall program and process, or what are great questions to ask and how can you start to track things.
Yeah, I think that's where the theme piece comes in as sort of a bit of a saving grace. And, I love the, I think the comparison piece, it's like the, what that person, I could do that. I could do that, and I could do that, losing sight of the ingredients that we have, so when we look at what everybody else has around us, they might have, they might have a little more cayenne than we have cumin or whatever that is.
Exactly.
And so we just kind of can't force that to happen. So knowing that the people that are watching this might be seekers, might be multi-potentialites, might be on the cusp of, or feeling more lost than ever, or whatever it is, what is it that you want them to take away from this? What do you really want for them?
What I want is to reframe things in terms of, instead of thinking about like one thing that you have to figure out in order to be happy, to shift the focus to think about what is the kind of impact that you would love to make in the world. Some bit of a problem or something that you just really want to address. And it goes directly to what you talked about. Martha Beck calls it compare and despair, where you're like, oh man, this is really my thing. But like, look at this person, and like, they're cuter than me, and they're like, they've done it for 5 years, and oh my God, they went to Harvard, and you tell yourself all these stories. Yeah. For the most part, when you look at what impact needs to happen, especially around really large issues, like helping people in their careers or solving hunger or, inequity in the world, there is so much more need than the people who are actually serving that need. That focus on where you can make an impact based on who it is that you are. And really what's important in the long term is the kind of impact and footprint, that you're going to leave on the earth. And if you're spending all of your time in agony beating yourself up because you don't know the thing, you're missing this opportunity to be engaging in a bunch of really wonderful activities that are just going to help make a difference in the world for things that you care about. And that's often the really fertile ground for where it is that you end up finding out, areas of deep passion, is by doing things, not by stepping back in analysis. Acting in the world and making impact is, I think, the way that you're going to start to get better answers to the question.